But first, Gladys Berejiklian has done it. She has managed to shame her Victorian counterpart, Dan Andrews, into releasing a plan. No small feat, because the Victorian Premier is pretty much shameless. We don't have a plan yet, but today we had an announcement that the plan will be released on Sunday.
So we'll have a meeting tonight about modelling. We'll have several other meetings throughout the week, and we'll piece together sort of one sector at a time, what that roadmap looks like. And at the end of this week, I expect right at the end of this week, we'll make some further announcements about what the weeks and months ahead look like.
It has been depressingly obvious over the last 2 years that no crisis, not even a pandemic, is such that it cannot be weaponised for political purposes. That is exactly what Labor premiers have sought to do, particularly with border closures and the vaccine rollout. Last week, we saw Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews try to create a diversion by crying foul over the allocation of Pfizer doses to southwestern Sydney, where it was needed most. It's unfair that Victoria is missing out, he protested. And incredibly, on Sunday, he cried foul because the federal government is again giving extra doses to Victoria. Take a look.
Premier, the Prime Minister's just confirmed 400,000 doses going to Melbourne suburbs in like a 3-week blitz.
Were you given a heads up on that before it was announced?
No.
Were you expecting a heads up on that before it was announced?
Well, it's hard to know what to expect really, isn't it? I didn't expect that hundreds of thousands of doses that should come to Victoria would have gone to Sydney. They did. Apparently how our national government works these days. But anyway.
Talk about contrived outrage. It was a very different story, however, when 3AW's Neil Mitchell interviewed Federal Health Minister Greg Hunt yesterday.
I think Victoria asked for 340,000. We were able to provide 417,000 doses.
But the Premier has been sniping at you, as you well know, or at the government, and you're telling me that you had told Martin Foley what was coming, General Fruin had told the Secretary of Health what was coming, and the media unit knew about it, and the Premier didn't. Either that or he was conning us. Are you suggesting the Premier was trying to divert attention from your major announcement on the vaccines coming here?
We're always working with all of the states. And from time to time, some of them will, as you know, seek a conflict.
Victoria's Health Minister Martin Foley has all but confirmed Greg Hunt's account. As reported in The Australian, Foley conceded he has a good relationship with his federal counterpart and that he had a constructive conversation with Mr Hunt before writing a letter to him on Saturday afternoon, and said he had received a response on Sunday. I asked for more in the priority areas that we need them. Our officials did the work, he said. As Greg Hunt said in his interview with Neil Mitchell, journalists should interrogate claims rigorously, not just repeat them, as many journalists covering Dan Andrews are in the habit of doing. Either Dan Andrews was being loose with the truth when he claimed he didn't know about the allocation of extra doses, or the Victorian Health Department he's ultimately responsible for doesn't have a clue what it's doing. Perhaps it's both. To give yet another example of that, the Herald Sun reported today, it also emerged on Monday that more than half of those counted as having been vaccinated in Victoria's rollout to Indigenous people were incorrectly identified as Indigenous. A week ago, federal data showed almost 48,000 had received at least one dose, but that was revised down to 21,559. It is believed a software issue was to blame. But as the ABC reported, Victoria's Health Department insisted the problem was the responsibility of the Commonwealth. Of course, it always is. It's never the Andrews government's fault. Incidentally, that's a good lesson for the supposedly apolitical experts. Take immunologist Professor Peter Doherty, who tweeted 10 days ago, "Victoria, a Labor state, leads the country in Indigenous vaccination rates." Far different when you see this updated graph, isn't it, Professor? Just goes to show even the experts aren't immune from the virus of bias. After all, Peter Doherty tweeted this about the Abbott government. He wrote, "This is not a conservative federal government. It's a radical, reactionary, evidence-denying, IPA, RM libertarian government, a national disaster."